February 1999. Cincinnati, Ohio. It was a cold, ordinary winter morning. The streets were quiet, coated in a thin layer of snow as early commuters made their way to work. Inside First National Bank, tellers chatted about the upcoming Groundhog Day festival, completely unaware that in just a few minutes they would be part of one of the most baffling heists in American history. At 11 a.m., just as the bank manager stood up to check the vault, all hell broke loose. Boom! The glass doors burst open as 4 masked men stormed in dressed in identical black suits and gloves. "Nobody move!" The leader's deep robotic voice sent chills through the room. Before anyone could react, one robber jammed a device into the security panel. The red alarm light blinked, then shut off. The bank's entire surveillance system went dark, not just in the building, but for a 2-block radius. The tellers froze in fear as the robbers moved with military precision. There was no shouting, no chaos. They knew exactly where to go and what to do. One headed straight for the vault. But here's the weird part. The vault was already open. Someone had disabled the time-locked door before they even got in. Inside job? No one knew it yet. But this detail would haunt investigators for years. They worked fast. In under 7 minutes, the gang had stuffed $50 million in untraceable, fresh bills into duffel bags. Outside, their getaway van was parked exactly 2 minutes away. By 11:18 a.m., they were gone. The investigation begins and hits a dead end. Minutes later, the first police officers arrived, but the gang was already miles away. No witnesses, no evidence, no alarm triggered. CCTV footage, nothing. Hard drive wiped clean. Eyewitness accounts, no details. They moved like ghosts. License plates, fake. The getaway van was found abandoned in a back alley, completely wiped down. FBI immediately suspected an inside job. How else could the vault be open at the perfect moment? They interrogated the bank managers, security guards, tellers. But here's the twist. Every single employee passed the lie detector test. There was no insider, no leaks, no logical explanation. How did they know exactly when to strike? The heist that should have been impossible. The news exploded. Groundhog Day bank heist leaves authorities stunned. $50 million vanished without a trace. The FBI put out a $5 million reward for any information, but no one came forward. For months, the case dominated headlines. But then, silence. The world moved on. Authorities assumed it was a one-time crime, a rare, perfectly executed heist. But what they didn't know was that in exactly 1 year, this nightmare would happen again. February 2000. Same bank, same time, same perfect execution. And that's when the FBI realized this wasn't just a robbery. This was the beginning of something far bigger. If you love thrilling, real-life crime stories, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Don't miss the shocking twist. February 2000. Exactly 1 year to the day since the impossible heist that had left authorities baffled. The First National Bank had undergone massive security upgrades. A new vault, more surveillance cameras, reinforced steel doors, and a team of elite security guards hired specifically to ensure that history would not repeat itself. The city was still haunted by the previous year's robbery, and the bank was under extreme scrutiny. Despite all precautions, no one could have predicted what was about to happen. At precisely 11 a.m., just as the bank manager was stepping out of his office, the nightmare returned. The same glass doors burst open. The same 4 masked figures entered, dressed in black suits and gloves. The same deep, robotic voice echoed through the room. "Nobody move." It was happening again. The security guards, now heavily armed, sprang into action. Guns were drawn, orders were shouted. But before anyone could fire a shot, the entire bank went dark. The lights flickered for a brief second, and in that split moment, the surveillance system completely shut down. Inside the bank, it was utter chaos. Employees and customers dropped to the ground, hands over their heads, as the masked men moved with terrifying precision. This time, they weren't even in a hurry. One of them walked straight to the manager's office and disabled the alarm system before it could even activate. Another went directly to the brand-new state-of-the-art vault, which had been locked with a reinforced security code that changed every hour. Yet, without hesitation, the vault door swung open. There was no cutting, no breaking, no code guessing. The robbers knew exactly how to override the system. They loaded their duffel bags again. $50 million in cash. Fresh bills, untraceable. Within 7 minutes, they were gone. This time, the FBI response was immediate. Police had stationed cars in a 4-block radius, ready to chase down anyone leaving the area suspiciously. Helicopters were already in the air. A full lockdown was initiated, but by the time officers stormed out onto the streets, there was no sign of the robbers. The getaway van was found 3 miles away, engines still running, doors wide open. Inside the vehicle, investigators found no fingerprints, no DNA, no clues, just one single groundhog figurine left on the front seat. The message was clear. The robbers were toying with them. That night, the news exploded. Groundhog Day heist. Again, history repeats itself, as same bank gets robbed on the same day. FBI, stumped by identical robbery 1 year later. The public was in shock. How was this even possible? Theories spread like wildfire. Was it the same crew as last year? Was this some kind of message? Or was there some kind of message? Or was there something even more sinister at play? The FBI now believed this couldn't be a coincidence. Either the bank itself was compromised, or someone on the inside was feeding the criminals information. By morning, over 200 bank employees and security personnel had been interrogated. They brought in forensic specialists, military experts, cybercrime analysts. Nothing. No digital footprints. No data breaches, just an exact replica of last year's robbery, executed to perfection. For the next few weeks, authorities scoured every detail of both crimes. The FBI built profiles, created suspect lists, followed every possible lead. They dug into the pasts of every employee at the bank. They investigated anyone who had suddenly come into large amounts of money. And yet, as months passed, they were no closer to solving the case. Then came February 2001. Most people thought the criminals wouldn't dare try again. The bank was practically a fortress now. Armed guards patrolled every entrance. The FBI had secretly placed undercover agents inside the building. Surveillance cameras were no longer connected to external networks. This time, the footage would be stored in a separate, secure location. Yet, at 11 a.m., every single camera shut down. The alarms were silenced. The vault doors swung open. The robbers were back. The third Groundhog Day heist had just begun, and this time the FBI was watching from the inside. What they were about to witness would change everything. What do you think? Was it a hacker, a rogue bank executive, a criminal mastermind with an inside man? Or was there something even bigger behind these perfectly executed heists? Drop your theories in the comments. February 2001. The FBI's trap is set. The First National Bank of Cincinnati was no longer just a bank. It was now the most heavily guarded financial institution in the country. By now, the Groundhog Day heist had become a national obsession. 3 identical robberies, 3 years in a row, each executed with terrifying precision. This time, the FBI was inside. As expected, the power shut down. The security system failed. The vault door swung open, and just like before, 4 masked men stormed in. But this time they weren't alone. Hidden inside the bank, 6 undercover FBI agents were waiting. The moment the first bag of cash was stuffed, the agents sprang into action. "Freeze! Hands in the air!" The robbers didn't panic. They didn't shout. They didn't even try to fight. Instead, they simply stood there, silent. The agents pulled off their masks. and what they found shocked them to the core. Each robber was a low-level criminal, completely unknown to the FBI. They weren't the original masterminds. They were just puppets. "Who's running this operation?" one agent shouted. But the criminals simply smirked. "We're just following orders," one of them whispered. "Whose orders?" The real mastermind was watching from the shadows, the man behind the heists. A shocking twist that night. The FBI launched the largest financial crime investigation in decades. They traced the stolen money, following it through a complex web of offshore accounts, fake identities, and ghost businesses. Every time they got close, the trail disappeared. Then, after 3 months of dead ends, an anonymous tip arrived at FBI headquarters. A single name: Raymond Calloway, a retired bank manager. The same man who had worked at First National Bank for 40 years. The same man who had been inside the bank on the day of the first heist. The same man who had sat through FBI interrogations as a supposed victim. He was now 80 years old, living in a luxury villa in the Caribbean, far from the chaos he had orchestrated. When agents arrested him, he didn't run. He just laughed. "You finally figured it out," he said, pouring himself a glass of whiskey. "Took you long enough." He then told them everything. The plan that took 25 years to execute. Raymond Calloway had been planning the heists since the 1970 sessions. As a bank executive, he had spent decades studying the security systems, the vault codes, the surveillance weaknesses. He knew exactly how to disable everything. But he didn't want just one robbery. He wanted to create the perfect crime. One that could be repeated over and over again with no consequences. He started recruiting criminals from different cities, low-level thieves, desperate men who needed money. They weren't masterminds. They were disposable. Every year he would hand-pick a new crew, tell them exactly what to do, and make sure they were caught. While the FBI focused on arresting the fake robbers, Calloway was already moving the real money offshore. By the time they realized what had happened, he had stolen over $500 million. The final Groundhog Day heist, and the secret that died with him. Raymond Calloway was sentenced to life in prison. But even behind bars, he never revealed where the rest of the money was hidden. Every February 2nd, he would wake up in his cell, smile, and say, "Happy Groundhog Day." And then, in 2025, at the age of 84, he died. The final clue to the missing millions died with him. To this day, the FBI has never recovered the full amount. Some say the money is hidden in secret vaults across the world. Others believe he had an unknown partner, someone still out there, waiting for the next Groundhog Day. And so, the legend of the Groundhog Day heist lives on. What do you think? Was Raymond Calloway really working alone, or is there still someone out there waiting to pull off one last job? Subscribe now for more shocking true crime stories. And remember, every February 2nd, someone is still looking for that missing $500 million.